And I'm making this video about projection and illusion. With Venus in Pisces right now, this is a big attribute of what's happening in our world. A student recently asked me to do this, and it coincides with what I was about to do it anyway, so it's interesting how that works. Anyway, they wanted to know what is the difference like between projection and, you know, what we might call true love or something like that. Because it's very easy to not be so clear about this, and why projection is related to Pisces, and in particular like Venus in Pisces. It's very much about projection and seeing beyond the projection, seeing beyond the illusion of beauty that we're looking for in the world. So projection, it's a psychological concept. It's really pretty easy that everything we see external, it's actually very old. It's also what we would call Maya in Indian and Eastern thinking. The world, they say, is an illusion. Of course, the world is not actually an illusion because it is real. Sorry, something on my feet. But it's not the only thing that's real, which means there are different layers of reality, not just physical. And of course, the physical emanates from the psychological and emotional. We have a feeling, and then we do something and create it, and then even that feeling emanates from something higher, which is more of consciousness and metaphysics. Because emotions are also physical. They're also part of the physical body and physical world. They're just more subtle. But then there's something even beyond the physics of mind and body toward metaphysical. And projection emanates from that, you know, basically whatever we are inside, we're projecting outside. And we project it onto the world around us. It's a very simple concept. I think it was Anais Nin said, we don't see people as they are, we see them as we are. Very interesting. What it means is that, have you ever noticed that everybody has something different to say about you? It's never the same. No two people, you know, agree on anything totally. Everyone sees something different in the same things. Why? Because the person is different. The person is different. The one who is projecting onto the situation is different. Everyone is different. So we're all projecting something different. We see the world differently because we're different, because the person is different. The projector, the one who's projecting out, is seeing something different. Scientifically, and through neuroscience, we've now recognized this as what we would call the RAS, or the reticular activating system, which means we see what we're looking for. And what we're looking for is based on who we are, our patterns, our mental habits. The astrology chart itself is a picture of the neuroscience of the brain, which forms our biases and our frame of reference of seeing things a certain way, filtering through the infinite possibilities in the world and seeing them a certain way. That's what the chart is. That's what our samskaras are. Again, it's not just, you know, neuroscience links up with everything in Eastern sciences as well. Our samskaras and our patterning, our emotional patterning and habits formed by our karmas, neuroscience would call that cognitive biases and these hardwired associations based on our past, you know, behavioral science. It's the same thing. So we have a certain past. This has conditioned us to see things a certain way. So we then project that out through the RAS, through the reticular activating system, and find it everywhere. We find what we're looking for everywhere. This is why it's hard to awaken. And if we and in order to awaken, we need to reprogram our tendencies. This is why things like neurolinguistic programming is to rewire the brain. So back to the original point of, so that's what projection is we project ourselves out into the world. Why is Venus in Pisces related to projection? Well, first of all, because Pisces is the kind of source of that. The source of that projection. Pisces is the part of us that's metaphysical and not of this world, really, more than anything. It's that environment that's very much about the dream state, the in-between life state, where we imagine things. It's very much about imagination. Of course, there's other things that have to do with imagination as well, the moon and other things. But the sign that's most related to that is Pisces. It's the last sign where the karmas are completing, where we're not necessarily nailed into all of the seriousness of this world. And Venus is literally the planet of the world, and especially the beauty of the world. So when someone is talking about projection, there's positive and negative projection. It's a very neutral concept. But when Venus goes through Pisces, there's this positive projection, this fantasy projection, this romance projection, this romance fantasy. Because a lot of our relationships revolve around these romance, soulmate fantasy projections, which is totally Venus and Pisces, kind of the archetype of that. And of course, what happens with that romance fantasy projection? It crashes every time, because another human being is never going to satisfy your fantasy projection, because they're a human being, and your fantasy projection is unreal. It's not real. And it's said, and I believe it, we fall in love with our own fantasy projection about the person, not the person itself. It's very easy to fall in love with the fantasy projection. It's very easy to love the projection. It's very hard to love the person. And we all do it. We all project some fantasy onto others, positive or negative fantasy. Even the repulsion fantasy is also there, but that doesn't get us engaged. What I'm talking about is the active part, the engagement that we wind up dealing with. And I actually wanted to make this video because of that Venus and Pisces. Part of the reason it's exalted there is so that we will connect with the source of the projection itself, which is the beauty in our own heart, the beauty that is transcendent, that's actually beyond this world. The pain of Venus in Pisces is we cognize that projection in reference to our daily life, and that projection slams against the rocky shores of reality, and we can get very disappointed with the world, especially with other people. We have to examine our projections. They wind up crashing. And what we can typically do is, when our projection fails, what do we typically do? We blame the other person. How dare you not live up to my fantasy? Which is basically what we're saying. How dare you be a human being that is different than what I thought you would be? When Venus is in Pisces, we can examine that a lot more. Hopefully we do. When Venus is powerful in your natal chart, for example, every transit goes back to the natal chart. If Venus is very weak in your natal chart, or it's got a lot of obstruction, then often as your fantasy projections fail, the pain you feel as they fail gets projected onto others, the ones that have failed you. Rather than, when Venus is powerful, you examine your projection and say, wait a minute. Because again, Venus is about respect, mutual respect, feeling respected and appreciated and valued. What happens when you project, we'll just say Venus in Pisces, when you project some fantasy, romance fantasy onto another, you're expecting, oh, they're going to treat me this way, it's going to be this way, they're this way, da da. And of course it's not real. So when they show themselves to be a real person, and they treat you like a real person rather than some thing you thought it would be, you're like, oh, they're not who I thought they were at all. They're blah blah. And you can see someone go in your mind from, oh, you're just the most amazing God, blah blah, to, oh, you're the devil. The person goes from the God to the devil. They're both, neither are true. And so when you play into your projection, it's not like, what you need to do is examine the projection and understand where it comes from. I'm not saying I'm not trying to make it sound like it's the worst thing in the world. We all do it. There's a reason we do it. There's a reason we're trying to connect to the soulmate fantasy and this transcendent beauty. Because the transcendent beauty is you. And the problem is you're trying to fixate on it and possess it in some worldly form that is never going to work. Like everything, the source of it is you. The source of the beauty, of the fantasy, of the transcendent beauty is a quality of your consciousness. It's the highest Venus. That's why Venus is exalted in Pisces. Because that beauty of the world is meant to be universalized and transcendent. It's not even meant to be, it is. It's a transcendent quality of life. It's bliss. The bliss of the soul is your true nature. And because you don't know yourself, you're trying to bridge the gap between the bliss of your true nature and some object in the world or person in the world, usually, because an object is just for our own pleasure, but another person is a higher vibration of that, so we project it onto a person, and then the projection fails. So with Venus in Pisces, it's a time to examine our projections. Women get a lot of sexual projection, right? This is a projection where, because of their beauty and their looks, men or other women or whatever can be very like, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so amazing, Public figures get a lot of projection. Again, it's often good or bad. Oh, you're so this or that. And it's unreal. And the other thing to understand is that it's objectifying. We always objectify the object of our projection. Right? And there's a disappointment and there's a falling from grace that results. And we can tend to blame the source, as I said before. And so one of the great things to do when Venus is in Pisces is we connect with the true source of that beauty in our heart, which is in us, and we can examine our projections. And rather than blame the other person for not living up to our fantasy projections, we can own the projection itself, learn something about ourselves, and learn something about the nature of divine beauty and divine bliss, and not try to possess it. There's nothing wrong with beauty, desire, glamour, joy, all of these kinds of things. As an astrology teacher, I talk about these things, and people, again, they project onto me because I talk about it in a way that sounds like I'm judging it. Identifying it doesn't mean I'm saying it's bad. There's nothing bad ever that comes. It comes from a divine source. But the problem is always attachment. And we try to possess it. Try to possess another person. And what we do instead is we objectify them. And once someone feels objectified, they're going to resist. And they should resist. Because they also understand that if you're turning me into an object, you're disrespecting me. And that is the core principle of Venus, is mutual respect. Projecting some kind of intention on someone that first they didn't have, or whatever, and because they've, often are negative projections, like especially after, let's say we're in a relationship or something, negative projections like jealousy or, other kinds of things where, are very debasing because they're objectifying people. And once we feel objectified, we sort of check out. And I'm going to say this, women objectify men just as much as men objectify women, but it's a different kind of objectification. Of course, women get sexualized in their objectification. Men get projections too. Men get objectified as well. and a mundane level, maybe around money or whatever, also about physical appearance, but also about, oh, you're so amazing and you're so blah da da and da 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 da. And when men get objectified, especially after they've seen it enough, they also realize that once somebody is objectifying them, it's not going to be long before the, oh, you're so amazing, turns into, oh, you're the biggest son of a bitch I've ever seen. These projections swing across the pendulum. Just like the man who objectifies the woman, oh, you're so amazing, and then if she doesn't cooperate, oh, you're a bitch. Right? It's like, she was neither one. He was neither one. The thing to understand about the objectification, the source of our objectification is really kind of passive. We're doing all of it. The thing to understand, to examine about your projections is it's coming from you. You're the source of it, like I said at the beginning, about the raz and looking for, or finding what you're looking for. You'll find that your projections, let's say about romantic projections, they often revolve around things that, traits that we're either trying to really strongly develop in ourselves, traits that we're lacking in, let's say, if you're a woman, traits that we're lacking in your father, if you're a man, traits that we're lacking in your mother, or traits that were very strong that you're trying to get, or something. It revolves around all that. But it shows about, it relates back to you. And no one can live up to any kind of projections. And we kind of fill in the blanks ourselves. Some part of our mind connects with something in them, their looks or their intelligence or some other kind of thing, and we're like, oh yeah, that thing, you're an embodiment of that. Again, it's very Pisces, Venus illusion, and seeing through that illusion is a big part of claiming our own relationship and our own connection with beauty and pleasure and mutual respect, and tracing that source of fascination and Maya and illusion and projection back to the source. One of the main reasons we do this, as I said, is because we're trying to connect with that true source of beauty ourself, as ourself, in ourself, as something not of this world. So the reason we do it is beautiful, but of course through the ego we turn it into something horrible. The best place to project your fantasies and have projections is your guru, your spiritual teacher. They'll take it all. And by the way, I didn't say your astrology teacher. I said your spiritual teacher. Maybe that's your astrology teacher. I make sure my students know I'm not their spiritual teacher. I'm an astrology teacher. My guru, Amma, people project all kinds of stuff onto her, and she's fine with all of it. To me, she's just my divine mother. Beautiful, the source of love and light and joy and beauty. And I'm not expecting her to never be that. And if she yells at me and does whatever, that's fine too. She's an embodiment of divine joy, bliss, power. Gurus take all kinds of projection. I've known so many devotees of Amma throughout the years, and every one of them says something different about, oh, Amma's this, and we project all kinds of stuff onto. But they're fine. That's where we're supposed to project. Project onto God. Project onto something that's not of this earth. That's okay. This is why projecting into deities and the forms of God, that's what they are, by the way. They're projections of our higher consciousness. And we can literally connect to the projection through devotional practices. But again, if we're expecting a person to be God because of unintegrated parts of our own mind, we're just going to bring a lot of damage, a lot of hurt to everybody. So think about that with this exalted Venus transit as well. As I record this in 2017, Venus is about to go retrograde in Pisces, March 3rd, March 4th. And it's a time to really re-examine our projections, re-examine all of this when Venus goes retrograde, it backs up on itself, and we can really connect to the authentic source within our own heart rather than the projection outward that's always going to lead to pain and suffering.